Good morning. I understand we have two public speakers this morning.
We do. Murray Bowden is the first speaker.
The one and only. Concerned grandparents.
Good morning. Good morning. When I noticed that you're not going to be here any longer, it's been nice. But it led me to look up on a board, on a sheet, on who's members of the board and so on and so forth. And this is going to be a repeat because I said this before. But I found that there's a whole bunch of people out there who are holdovers, which means they're not regular members of the board and they have to hold their breath until they get reappointed. And sometimes they don't get reappointed like you. And what that does is present a problem for the board. They're not free to make decisions because they don't know if they're going to be here next month. And it leads to a conflict of interest, I think. So I recommended at the first committee that anybody who's on the board and is a holdover, either get yourself reappointed in the next 30 days or get off the board. Because holdovers have no meaning in this world economy today. You're either on the board and being responsible or leave. And the other thing I spoke about this morning, and I know I'm repeating myself, but not everybody heard it. Each of you on the board should have a computer in front of you, your laptop. Because I presume that all of you use laptops for a lot of things today. And it doesn't set the right example for these people. The board is responsible for setting the tone of the whole MTA. If you don't have computers in front of you, you don't have to use them, by the way. You can fake it. Just leave it open. Turn it on. We don't have to know if you're using it or not. But if you're not having the latest information in front of you on a computer screen, a laptop, or an iPad, these people aren't going to do it. And so we're in a transition period of what's gone on before, and there are the political issues if you get on this board. And too many of the board members are here because of political considerations. We can't afford political considerations in this economy. We need work. We need people who know what they're doing.
Please sum up, Mr. Bowden.
I'm sorry?
Please sum up.
Well, you just bring a point. There is no place for an individual to make information available to the board except right here and now. And it may take more than 2 minutes. But until you create a situation where I can address this kind of issues, at the Port Authority, Christie appointed a new chairman, Sampson. And the first thing he said when he came in his opening remarks were, is anybody would like to communicate with anybody in the Port Authority, please let us know. There were maybe 75 people in the room, and there was only one person he was talking to. It was me, because I'm the guy who has the issues. Well, within a week, I got myself a Port Authority handler. You know, like in Afghanistan, they give you somebody to follow you around. He's excellent. He arranged for me to meet with people. Now, that kind of information is not available at the MTA. There needs to be a place where if I have a legitimate request, I can come and make it. Now, that's a cultural change. The culture here is keep the information locked out. Well, I've got some information and I have some questions and I can't get to talk to anybody. So this is the responsibility of the board, because they're going to do what you do. If you can't provide a place for me to talk to somebody, I don't need to do it here. I need to talk to these people out here, but I can't arrange it. And it's going to come up again at Bridges and Tunnels. So this is about a cultural change in the MTA. Make it available for me. I don't need to do this here. I need to do it with somebody out there. And it's not possible now. And if you want to arrest me again, because I've been arrested, and I'm doing this under the orders of the judge, because the last time he said, Mr. Bowden, keep doing it. We need more people to do what you're doing. And they dismissed the charges of disorderly conduct. 2 charges, last April, at the MTA Board meeting. And I've told them at the first meeting, and I'll tell you again, you want to arrest me again, been there, done that, done my perk walk right through Grand Central Station, handcuffed right behind me.
The next speaker is Barry Adler.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk to you this morning about customer information. Basically, it's provided in maps. This is a map that the MTA just put out 10 months after the service changes, a 2011 map updated for subway map with bus connections for customers with disabilities. Why does it take 10 months to get a map printed after service changes, which changed routes and changed travel patterns? It takes 10 months. These people need help. They're the most vulnerable people and the most people that need to have the most information available, and you take 10 months. Please do not wait 10 months in the future. It is very important that we get this information as soon as possible. Also, I just have a suggestion of improvements on this map where you have elevators in the system on the platforms. Could you please try to at least indicate what part of the platform they are located so we don't have to walk 10 cars or 8 cars to get to an elevator because it's not posted in the map. Thank you very much for your help. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. Tom is taking notes on that. I think you had some very good suggestions. Thank you.
Still some trains with the old maps, believe it or not.
Okay, could I have a motion and then we'll vote on the minutes? Motion?
Made.
All in favor? And work plan. Bob?
There is no change to the work plan, but a couple of the reports quarterly reports that are due came in late, so specifically the elevator and escalator performance on the Transit Adjudication Bureau reports, we'll bring them next month.
In place of that, we're going to have 2 reports, one on the number 7 line and one on signals, which I think are pretty critical. Tom? Carmen, actually.
Good morning. Subway performance results for the month of March and the 12-month average are as follows. Subway weight assessment, the 12-month rolling average for system-wide subway weekday weight assessment was 78.2 in March of 11. That's a slight decrease, 0.3% from 78.5 in March of 10. In terms of terminal on-time performance for March of 11, system-wide weekday OTP was 86.4. That's a decrease of 5.4 from 91.3 in March of 10. System-wide weekend OTP was 89.3. That's up 0.6% from 88.8 in March of 10. Track gangs, geo work equipment on the right-of-way, and overcrowding were the primary factors affecting the terminal OTP in March. Moving on to key performance indicators, system-wide service KPI was 82.9. That's down 1.9% from 84.5 in March of 10. Passenger environment survey KPI was 91.5. That's down just 0.4% from 91.8 in March of 10. And for Staten Island, the service KPI is not reported. However, the Staten Island PES KPI was 87.6, down 1.6% from 89 in March of 10. Mean distance between failure decreased in March at 192,527. It was down 9.8% from 213,410 in March of 10. The 12-month average, however, was 170,410 miles. That's up 6.1% from 160,566 in the preceding 12 months. Just a note on the OTP. We continue to see particularly you see the issue of the OTP and on the IRT continues to be somewhat troubling for us, but really is part and parcel of the amount of work that's out there, and the emphasis that we're placing on line managers is one of more critical to get weight assessment correct, make sure that the evenness of our service is correct, even if that means we take a small hit on the OTP. Much more important. And the second thing we see in the figures, interestingly, on the IRT is that if we need to do maintenance during the week, we will do it, even if that impacts OTP. So you're seeing a bit of that in there, too. So that concludes my report.
Safety, Cheryl Kennedy?
Tom?
Yes.
Forgive me if I may. I have a couple of questions I want to direct. The IRT issue is one that Carmen has addressed. That service continues to be pretty bad. It ain't getting any better. And so the first question is, what long-term detailed plan, if any, do we have to get that service up to snuff? Now, I understand that the tunnels there are different from the rest of the line, and therefore the cars have to be differently configured. But the public has a right to expect, and I know that you are committed to fulfilling that expectation. It's got to get better. We need to put together a plan. What is it going to take?
Charles, could I just ask you to be specific about which lines you're
Sure.
talking about? Is it the West Side IRT?
Let me deal with it in two ways. The numbers I quoted from or referred to were page 3.1. To be specific, I am focusing again on the Bronx lines, or those that emanate from the borough of the Bronx. Let's take a look at the numbers 2, 3, even the 6. Those lines continue to have performance that is below that which emanates from service that starts in another borough.
You know, so I don't want to jump in here, but you know, the IRT line, we have a better information because it's more electronic, so we can get better quality data. So if anything, I think some of the other lines are overstated in their performance relative to these lines. That's aside from the point. We do have very good data on the performance on these lines, and I agree with you. It's not where we need it to be. But I just want you to know, for comparative purposes, the IND and the BMT, their performance is probably overstated a little bit.
Doreen, as usual, you have put your finger on another problem, which is this. The public really doesn't give a damn whether the statistics are right or the statistics are wrong. If the service ain't good, it isn't good. Now, if it's worse on these other lines, that's going to make those folks feel a lot worse than they already do. My only point is, and this isn't a today issue, at some point we have got to have a specific plan and program to improve that category of service. I carry water for the borough of the Bronx. Others do it for other boroughs, whether it be Queens or Brooklyn. But the outer boroughs are suffering, and it's not right.
We want to come back to the board. We've had a discussion with the committee chair about a session to explain how service is delivered and what actions are taken when delays occur with respect to minimizing the impact. We made a conscious decision when we moved away from on-time performance to a weight assessment figure, knowing that in some cases that figure was going to do us some damage because you would see low percentages, and we need to define what that percentage is. It's a pass or fail statistic that says as soon as you get headways, trains operating 25% out of their headway, it counts against you. When in fact, if a train, let me just run through an example. If you've got a 4-minute headway, any train that is less than 60 seconds late is counted as passing subway weight assessment. Any train that is 60 seconds or more fails. And we know that a train that's 65 seconds, 5 seconds out, will have less impact than a train that's 2 or 3 minutes out. And so we're trying to, this is the first time we've used these numbers in this way, and we're actually generating a history of what they mean. And we want to come back to the committee in a meeting and explain to the committee what it means, because we may need to take a look at those and provide some more additional information and weight them in terms of how bad that failed statistic is. Certainly, we're still bound by the principle that evenness of service is by far the most important thing rather than just late, although you'd like to do both. But evenness of a service is more important because that way you're having less impact on customers. And once we have that dialogue, we also need to have, we totally agree with you, what are the goals that we need to set in terms of improvement, what is acceptable, and then what plan will we put in place to be able to achieve that.
Thank you. And let me then give you the second question, if I may. This, again, is a familiar refrain of mine, which is the subway stations and the statistics on page 3.20, the PES KPI station information. And again, the borough of the Bronx is in last place. Let me ask you a question, if I may, and ask if you would give consideration at your early convenience to the following. There are some stations, such as those that you have graciously consented to examine at the request of the Bronx Borough President for their overhaul. But there are other stations that have cosmetic problems, and cosmetic problems virtually only. Now, we've all seen one version or another of the extreme makeovers, and I wonder whether we could not have crews assigned to specific subway stations, closing them on a Friday, opening them on a Monday after people have fixed the lighting, put in new lighting, done painting, put in new tiles, done a job that makes people understand, A, that we care, and B, that we're trying. I wonder if that's not something we could do. Why can't we apply those principles to the subway?
In fact, we actually do, but prior to your tenure on the board, we went through a presentation in terms of the change in approach that we have for stations with respect to not waiting for out-of-phase rehabilitations and modernizations and moving to a component program and moving to an enhanced maintenance program primarily at the high-volume stations and working our way down. Given the fiscal climate we're in, though, I would say that it will be difficult, if not impossible, for us to get to all the stations. But we can share with you what that approach is. And there's primarily, in hierarchical fashion, 19 stations, and how many complexes? I think 8 complexes, 2 complexes in each of the boroughs that are getting the primary treatment because of the passenger volumes they see.
I would like to just first thank you. I appreciate it. But number two, to ask you to pay consideration of the fact that there are boroughs outside of Manhattan, which I know you pay attention to, but we've got to start doing that.
The 19 stations they're spread across all 4 boroughs. They are.
Just
Ira.
on weight assessment, that's what I look at, not on-time performance. And my concern, although it seems to be slight, is the decline in the not that the numbers are in the 70s or 80s, because I said, well, that's great because that seems to reflect my experience. So I'm happy that that's what it's showing. That's what we see. But the idea is it seems to be going in the wrong direction, and that's the concern, although slight. Another concern I have is the MDBF for the R62As, which operate on the 7 line. That seems to be also in a steady decline, although they perform well. It's just when you see a trend where you're declining, I just wonder if something's being done to address that, or that's just considered to be an anomaly. I just appreciate it.
Well, one of the problems we're going to have with MDBF is that with the money we put into the SMS program, but even as the fleet ages, what goes up will come down. I mean, there is no way we will be able to sustain extremely high MDBFs at the numbers we've got. But we will look at that specific issue with the R62As and come back to you with an answer.
Even the R46s you've managed to improve, which is commendable. Those cars are supposed to have bad reputation.
We have an ongoing issue with some of the doors, a relay on a door on the R62As, and as a matter of fact, we just had to take one of the vendors off of our approved list so that we can get a better part. So we are experiencing some door issues, but hopefully that'll be resolved soon.
Carmen, we've been experiencing those door issues on that car for, I think, probably about 18 months.
I can't speak for going back that far.
I remember being
here,
told it was a door issue 18 months ago, so I hope we're getting around to getting that fixed.
But if
that explains the 12-month average decline.
Yes.
Okay.
But when we take somebody off the approved vendor list, it's generally that we've reached a point where they're not working with us. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, let's keep moving.
Okay. With respect to safety, results were good overall. The subway customer accident rate declined for both the month of February and over the past 12-month period. The accident rate was 3.16 per million subway customers in February, down 16.4% from last year, and the 12-month average rate decreased by 6.5% compared to a year ago. The employee lost time accident rate decreased by 7.8% in March. However, the 12-month average rate increased 7.4% from the previous year. There were 92 confirmed fires for the month of March, down 6.1% from the previous year. Fires also decreased over the last 12 months by 2.7%. 98.9% of all the fires were categorized as being low or average in severity for the month of March. Thank you.
Chief Diaz, crime statistics.
Good morning. Again, for the month of April, we were up 10 crimes, 5.7%. You see that grand larcenies still continue to be an issue for us. Year-to-date, grand larcenies accounted for about 34% of our crime. For the month of April, it was about 40%. The last time we spoke, we talked about decoy operations and fencing operations. We've done decoy operations, successful decoy operations in every borough. Matter of fact, the week after our last meeting on the number 4 line, 59th Street and Lexington Avenue, our decoy team observed a male who they knew from prior arrests. He had 42 priors, 17 grand larceny priors, and 4 robbery priors. Was also on parole. They followed him onto the train. We had a decoy on that train. When he went up to the Bronx, he had put his jacket over his arm and then picked a cell phone out of our from our decoy. But these are the type of issues we're facing with our decoys. Fencing operations we spoke about the last time. We did a large number of actually successful fencing operations. 3 of them successful. We did fencing operations in every borough to try to discourage people from buying these cell phones, particularly at commercial locations. Again, our arrests in the grand larceny area are up 20%, so we're making arrests in the right spots. We're spending more time on the trains now to try to deter and apprehend the people responsible for these types of crimes.
Yes.
Cheryl, on the issue of the fires, I thought we were going to start producing data that explains what the cause of the fires was, how much of it was, what percentage was litter, what percentage was, car-related, and that kind of thing. So we might, if we can trace litter problems, we might be able to address that if that's the cause of the fires.
Well, I can get that for you. That's no problem, because we do track that. But most of them are right-of-way fires.
Thanks.
Okay, finance.
Preliminary March 2011 revenue was $322 million, $6.9 million above budget, mostly due to a $5.1 million period positive adjustment from replacing January and February 2011 estimated fair revenue with actual first quarter fair revenue. Year-to-date fare box revenue was $861.8 million, $7.1 million below budget, due mostly to the multiple snowstorms we experienced in January. The average non-student fare in March 2011 was $1.64. And in constant 1996 dollars, the average fare fell from $1.38 to $1.11 in 2011. Preliminary March 2011 operating expenses before depreciation and OPEB were below budget by $17.3 million. That's due mostly to favorable timing of fringe benefit expenses, higher reimbursable overhead credits, and lower paratransit completed trips, and favorable prior year accrual adjustments. Year-to-date operating expenses were $15.6 million, or 1.1% below budget. Ridership, March 2011 ridership totaled $207.6 million, a 0.1% below budget. Year-to-date ridership was $559.7 million, 1.7% below budget. Average weekday subway bus ridership was 5.4 million, an increase of 2.4% over March the previous year, and was the highest ridership on record in over 40 years. March 2011 average weekday local bus ridership was 2.2 million, a decrease of 3.3% from the prior year. And March 2011 average weekday express bus ridership was 43,000, a decrease of 4.4% from the prior year. March average weekday paratransit ridership was 31,000, an increase of 2.9% from March of 2010. An early look at our preliminary April 2011 fare box revenue. were .2 million below budget, and preliminary operating expenses were below budget by .6 million.
I guess it's too early to figure out why we're a little bit below budget in April. It was April, there shouldn't have been any
Is Aaron here?
related.
No, I don't know.
It may have
No.
been. It may have been. I'm not sure, but it may have been the holidays. There was a lot of holidays in April.
That's right. We had Easter and Passover towards the okay.
Right. And the school holiday and
Right.
stuff. So.
Okay.
Program? Fred Smith?
Tom,
Yeah.
on bus ridership, which seems to be falling, express and local, do we have any assessment at all as to why that is happening? And then, once we have an assessment, figure out what it is we can do to improve? Maybe it's the bunching of buses. Maybe it's just too much traffic. What is it?
Well, when we made the decision a year ago to find $70 million in savings on the operating side to take a look at service on both the bus and subway side, bus ridership had already started falling. And so we found ourselves in the position of having to generate that $70 million in savings. The majority of it did come from the bus side. And whenever you cut service, there's a further fall off in bus ridership. You'll see that trend magnified on the express bus side, but it tracks pretty well with employment and the economy. So from a standpoint of, I don't believe we're in a mode right now where we have money, because it's the old adage of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Do you put the service out before you have the money, before you have the demand, or do you wait for demand and then put the service out? And it's where we stand right now from a fiscal standpoint. I think it's pretty hard to put the service out.
But let me just pursue that for one more moment. The City of New York maintains, and correctly I believe, that traffic is a serious problem for the City of New York, and it's trying through 15 or more different ways to improve traffic concerns. They can improve only if mass transit replaces the car as a vehicle of transportation. It seems to me that what we need to do is understand, A, specifically what it is we can do to improve ridership on the buses, and then B, what it is that we need from the city, from the state, from any other form, because it clearly can't come from the fare box. There comes a point of diminishing returns there. What is it we can do to just take the position we have to take our savings from someplace? Doesn't really long-term answer my question, because we'll get into a spiral that we can't extricate ourselves from.
In my 30 years in the in this industry, this is by far the worst I've ever seen in terms of fiscal. Although we've had cycles that were in a similar vein, but never as pronounced as this. Simply put, and the board members know their fiduciary responsibility. If we don't have the money, we can't provide the service. So, and literally, as the economy starts to come back, we watch the numbers very carefully, and where demand is creating ridership conditions that is inhibiting the safe and reliable movement of service, we will add that service at that time. But prior to that, there's just no way we can really do it.
Could we do this? Could we take a look at what it is we need to improve it, how much it will cost, lay that on the table, and let the public officials make a decision whether it is worth doing or not?
Well, certainly we have done some things. We've worked with the city with the select bus service that we put in place both in the Bronx and in Manhattan, and we plan to extend that service. No. I'm just saying those are initiatives we're trying to do, because certainly we know that if we can speed up the running time of buses, if we can provide for means for having more reliable service, people will respond to it. And the ridership on both the express bus, the SBS services that we have, is growing. And so those are some of the initiatives we're doing. But across the board, blanket in terms of, and you're not saying that, but even a targeted approach, until we have the money, it's difficult to do.
What I'd like to know is what we need to do what. That's the kind of study I'd like to see us do. What is it that we need in money to achieve a finite objective?
Yeah, Jay.
This is what you're talking about is obviously a much larger issue and a much larger conversation that is one that we should have, but I want to remind everyone we've had for several years in a row, every single time, laying out what our revenue needs are, what additional revenues would do if we got additional money from Albany, what new bus routes and what new express buses could we put in there, and you get into a situation where, in one perspective, you need the money to save yourself from cutting the routes, and another perspective, laying out additional routes to get cars off the road. So this is a much larger conversation, but I just wanted to point out, this one we've had many times in recent history, and one we can't do alone. And we haven't done alone, and we've gone to Albany, and we've gone to Washington, and we've talked with the city, and we've done a number of things here. So it's not that we haven't done anything, and I don't think it's not that the MTA has put together any bus routes that would expand. In fact, in the last 4 years, I've seen 2 different plans that expanded express bus routes throughout the boroughs and kept the routes. So there's been information and plans out there.
I'm not suggesting that efforts have not been made. All I am suggesting is that this is a subject that I think we have to continue to pay attention to, that we need to lay out very carefully for those who perform public service in elected or appointed positions. Here's your alternative. If we either get X dollars, we can provide Y service, whether it be from the city, from the state, or the federal government. But we need to put it in dollars and cents and specifically to them.
I think we have, but I mean, every time we have a budget cut and then a budget exercise, in fact, those routes are placed out there. We went through that when we cut a year ago, these latest routes. We need X amount of dollars. Please, Albany, kick in or find some other new ways of revenue, or these bus routes will be cut. And it was very specific, outlined specifically how many people would be impacted, the 2 or 3 other ways they would have to go as a result of that. And that was sent to every elected official in the state of New York, frankly. So what you're pointing out is good practice and something we should do. I just want to remind everyone we have done it, and we do it every single time we're faced with a budget situation.
Mark, did you have a...
On the bright side, Tom's most interesting statistic, as far as I'm concerned, is that the average fare, non-student fare, is 20% less than it was in 1996 in constant 1996 dollars. If we put that in an ad in every bus and subway, I don't think anybody would believe it, but maybe it would do some good.
I know I've spoken to school groups and used that statistic, and people are floored when they put it in that terms. I think the whole notion of present value is something that it eludes most people, but it really is a stunning statistic. I think one other thing that I'd be curious about, and of course it's going to be hard to get to, but the increase in subway ridership, I wonder how much of that is a transfer of people who are formerly taking the bus and are now choosing to take subways. I know that with the traffic situation, I'm on the subways a lot more than I'm on the buses these days, and maybe that's a choice others are making as well.
I'll ask Peter. He doesn't have to answer now, but we ought to drill down and see if we can find out what that, because it's a good point. I mean, the bus ridership is falling, but the rail ridership is increasing, and you would assume some of those are people that are coming from the buses to the subways.
Capital program? Are we on to capital with
Yes,
Fred?
we are. Good
Okay,
morning.
good. Good morning, Fred.
Looking to capital results from March, a total of $24 million in awarded projects. 2 major projects to note. One is a non-revenue vehicle procurement to replace trucks that support both maintenance and operations system-wide. Second is a power project, circuit breaker house, to be located on the Nostrand Avenue line serving 2 and 5 between Beverly and Church. That'll be a new room and power equipment. On the completion side for the month, a total of $307 million. 3 major projects to report on, one including the rehabilitation, including ADA accessibility at the J Street Borough Hall Station. That's our new transfer between the old Lawrence Station now to the J Street Metrotech complex. Second is the Charleston Annex bus facility in Staten Island, which, as I reported, we did open in January and started to receive benefit of that project. And the third is a flooding project to alleviate flooding conditions on a number of stations, and that included raising the landing to prevent water from entering into the staircases. A number of stations on the G line and Utica on the A&C in Brooklyn as well. That completes my report.
Any questions on that? You know, just going back to something you had pointed out, Chuck, I found utterly fascinating a report that came out recently called Behind the Curb. I don't know how many people read that, but it talked about commutation patterns, changing commutation patterns in the city, and that more people are going from borough to borough rather than outer boroughs into Manhattan, and that we don't necessarily have a system that accommodates the easy transit of people from one borough to the next. And, of course, if we could wave a magic wand and put our money where our travelers want to go, we would have those types of bus routes. But that's something that I really hope management here paid some attention to and is looking at very carefully, because we do have to put the service where people want it and need it.
Doreen,
Yes.
my view is, for what it's worth, that we have some extremely talented leaders in the various operating agencies, and particularly in transit. My problem is that we need to do planning, which I know we do, but I think we need to hone in on exactly the issue you've just pointed out. We need to lay out specific cost statements and say to Assemblyman X from Brooklyn and Senator Y from the Bronx, here is the problem. I don't want to hear your belly aching without doing something about it. It seems to me that we have that responsibility across the board. I raised it this morning on the railroad, saying when it came to Huntington Station, go after the elected officials in Huntington. They have a responsibility. This agency is the constant butt of attack for omission. And we ought to lay the blame where it can be dealt with and with the people who have the responsibility. And if they don't like it, tough.
I'm sorry you weren't with us when those cuts were made, and we made several dispiriting trips up to Albany to do exactly what you suggested, and were not met with a tremendous amount of success. It's pretty sad that transit is so far down on people's agendas when it's so critical.
Except when they have to get to work.
Any other questions on the operating report? Let's move on to MTA CC.
Okay. Well, that's the wrong. Okay. Just put up, please, the Fulton Street Transit. There was a concern that the structure is not proceeding fast enough, and that had to do with our problems of putting up the crane. Happy to report that we have the 7th floor on the slot building. That's the building next to the Corbin building, and the 4th floor here has been installed. So we have, in fact, made up the time that was lost, and I believe that we'll be removing the crane shortly. That means we'll have everything installed. In addition to that, the 135th William Street entry point that I've said will be open in July is proceeding well. In effect, the new entrance is the finishes are being put in place right now, and we are moving along with the reinstallation of the Marine Grill murals that we had there. The last one is going up as we speak. I just saw it on Friday. The next part would be the cleaning of the Corbin building. This is probably the major piece of work that we have to do there. Next, this shows you some of the intricacies that we're dealing with. That is a terracotta. It's actually pretty fragile, but we look forward to a successful completion of that. And that's how it's supposed to be looking when we're done, hopefully. Last but not least, our station on Cortlandt, the southbound, is moving well. We will be opening on 9/11, and some of the things that I've seen we already connected into the Liberty underpass, and that will be reopened after many years that was closed. So overall, Fulton Transit is moving well, and that's about the extent of it. Number 7. The project continues to progress well. There are right now 4 contracts that are under construction: the cavern, the running tunnels, Site L, Site J, and Site K. Today I'm going to present actually an action item that requests, in effect, your approval for a settlement that my project team, reached with S32. That actually they are actually running the tunnels in the station cavern contract. The terms of the settlement resolve a number of issues. Most importantly, early access requirement that I need to have for the next contract is the systems contract. In order for us to be able to complete the job on time, I needed more to accelerate, in fact, the system contract so I can finish the job and have trains running December of 2013. That being said, this particular contract, what we'll do with this particular settlement, what we'll do will provide access to the cavern to the system contractors about 5 months early, actually about 6 months, close to 6 months early, as well as some other things that will help ensure that we're going to have trains running in December of 2013. The running tunnels and station cavern, and this is, it shows that they're progressing very well. By the way, this particular contract, the main contract, the 1145 that I just talked about, the settlement right now, will be completed ahead of time significantly, probably a minimum of 6 months or more. As well as within budget. Actually, even after the settlement, we are below the original budget we awarded due to credits that we have taken. Next. This will show you the looking at to the south interlocking. You can see the yellow part is the waterproofing. Next. This is a look at the mezzanine looking north to the interlocking. So work has really progressed very fast, and we're looking to the systems, that means finishes and so forth. Let me go to 2nd Avenue. The tunnel, as you know, on the western tunnel was completed. The eastern tunnel is progressing well. We're right now at 83rd Street. And is moving, in fact, in the last 10 days. I don't want to jinx it. We are doing somewhere between 90 and 120 feet a day. That this is the best we ever had. I didn't expect it, but I'm happy to get it. The 96th Street Station, heavy structural, actually we have completed about 70% of the second pile work. And I just wanted for the point of seeing what a second pile is. It's just right up there, and shows you it's going down to rock, and then we anchor it. These anchors look kind of small, but they go anywhere between 80 to 120, 140 feet to anchor the end. So they're significant. Here it just shows you the piece of equipment that we're using to install that. The next. Now here is the thing. I'm sure that our effort to improve the condition on the surface were significant, and we now can start. Will start seeing some of the stuff. Primarily, the last week, and I was there actually last night. They're resurfacing. We have been able to work with the city. And DOT is resurfacing 2nd Avenue from 90th all the way to 69th. And that's happening, and that's going to provide a much better riding surface to everyone. Is that for me? No. the markings will be put in place, new markings, making it much safer to cross the street. So all of these things are happening while we are going to, in effect, in addition to that, do at least two other things. Number one, we're going to start wrapping various work areas, and this is actually what used to be a park. And go back one. And right now it has kind of a schlocky wrapping. And we're going to make it look a little better. Yeah, that's a word that I've heard here in New York used a lot. Anyway, this is actually the urban canvas, and again, we are working with the city in using this type of displays to make it look a little better. Now we have the big piece of equipment at the vertical conveyor system, not conveyance, but anyway. And that again will be fixed to look much better since we expect it to be there for a while. Then at 72nd Street, where we are building the cavern for the 72nd Street station, that's the piece of, that's how we kind of work there. We're changing that paradigm. We work with the community, and we are putting in a system that will, in fact, house everything, will be enclosed. As we speak, this is almost complete. I have seen it yesterday. Again, it's pretty massive. It's going to be about 12 feet away from the building, yet is going to be able to enclose everything, and we're going to create a much quieter environment. We're using electrical winches and dust and movement of everything is going to occur inside. Go to the next. That's how it's going to look at the end of the day. We're also going to do something to make it look a little more attractive than it looks like now. But trucks will be entering at the left end. You have the Bogdan? You don't have anything to point out? To the left, up, that's it. That's where trucks are going to go in, and then we're going to come out to that door. So there will be an area inside where the spoils will be brought up and then dump into that. Okay, let me go back to some of the things that I would like to report in addition to that. Can we get some lights? Thank you. The 86th Street open cuts and utility relocation work is continuing. And they're still driving soldier piles, and it's on time, so we expect that to be finished. Once that's done, some of the area will be taken over by the 86th Street cavern contract. That at this point, although we had a bid, we have not awarded it. All bidders submitted their intent to maintain their bid, and this are delays and slippages. They're due to some certifications, and we are working with FTA to try to overcome that.
This is on the station, 86th Street station?
This is on the 86th Street station.
So when do you think we're going to be able to award that?
At this point, I will not give you a prediction. I don't know. This is the best answer I can give you at this point.
What about the track signals and power contract that's in procurement?
That contract, we have, in effect, extended it to June 16th, if I remember correctly. Just double-check my notes here. Yes, the proposals are expected June 16. We extended that, and we are trying to coordinate with other MTACC system contracts procurement, so not to kind of create a total mayhem, because we get asked by contractors to delay because for whatever reason they do not seem to want to work in parallel. They work a lot in
in a linear fashion. So that's an issue. Just another point. 63rd Street in Lexington is moving well. At this point, we are taking over one of the fan plants, and you know, the internal approvals for asbestos removal were obtained. So that's moving well. Just wanted to mention the fact that we have we're blasting at 69th Street, and we hold true. That means we have one of the tunnels that, in effect, the western tunnel, we made a hold true, so that will allow us to move ahead with the cavern. The eastern tunnel is now at 83rd Street. So if we, and I say if we continue in that same pace, probably I'm looking forward to go, to go by the 72nd Street, so we can start thinking about, once we do that, we're going to be in a much better position. By the way, if we hold that, whatever delays we are now experiencing at 86th Street, potentially could be overcome, because if we are fast and finishing and then removing the machine, we're going to be in a very good position to mitigate the delays that we have there. I think that's about it.
Are there any questions on any of these projects? Okay, thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
On to procurements.
Steve? The procurement package this month presents New York City Transit and MTA CC procurements. There are 9 actions totaling $16.2 million, and I ask for your approval of all actions in the agenda.
I have a motion, please, and then we'll take some discussion. Okay. Yes.
I'd like to call generally to the attention of the GAL manufacturing on page 6.11. Elevators have long been a problem in terms of proprietary parts, whether they be the modules or the like. They have been the subject of repeated investigations by the U.S. Department of Justice and other entities. I wonder if in the future, when we let contracts for elevators, and I'm talking about the future, this may also extend to the escalator, we see if we can provide in those contracts for non-proprietary part or part interchange, because in what you have happening here is what's going to always happen. You're going to wind up being forced to sole source. You're going to be forced to try and negotiate the best deal you can, and they've built in the business going forward pretty much like the printers and the toners. What we need to do is to see, given our purchasing power, whether or not we can open up this field of endeavor.
That's an excellent point. Could somebody address that?
The vendor in this contract is located in the Bronx. It's the only Bronx vendor we have. You aren't attacking this one because it's in the Bronx, are you?
No, I was attacking it as a pure matter of convenience. And clearly, since it's in the Bronx, it must clearly be one of the most superior ones available, since it hopefully employs Bronx people. No, really, I'm trying to get at a systemic problem in this industry. I don't think there's anyone on the construction side who will ever disagree with me.
We can certainly look into that. GAL happens to have, as you indicated, a lion's share of the industry with regard to door controls. It's not the entire contract or the elevator, but they represent, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80%. Most of the elevator operators or manufacturers rely on GAL. So we can look into it, but unseating them as a major player or getting others to compete is going to be difficult.
Forgive me. I misspoke, so let me be clear. I'm focused on the elevator manufacturers with their proprietary parts. I'm not focused on the vendors of the equipment, the parts to replace, and the like. What I'm focused on is it is the initial elevator installation that prescribes what you can substitute should there be a breakdown. What I'm trying to do is to make sure that to the maximum extent possible, we as a major user try to force the industry to make itself open so that we are not captives to their parts. That's the issue.
Okay. It's a very good suggestion.
It applies to so many other areas too.
Yeah, well, we're loaded with these types of procurements, unfortunately, because we have pretty specific equipment that is the preserve of very, very few contractors. But I agree with your point entirely, and I hope we'll. Thank you.
We will address it. I mean, we're going to have a presentation later this year on elevators and escalators. If we could get reliable, long-term operating escalators, we'd be a step ahead in the game, to say the least.
Amen to that. Any other questions on the procurement package? Can I have a vote? Jeff, did you have? No.
It's in the package to approve the use of an RFP.
We want to make sure it was approved once before. We're re-procuring it. We want to make sure the board is approving it. We want to make sure we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's in this procurement.
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
There's just approval to use the negotiated procurement process.
Okay, can we have a vote? All in favor? Thank you.
There are 3 action items this month. First, we are seeking the committee's approval for revisions to the New York City Transit Committee Charter. The proposed charter can be found in Section 7 of your agenda books. This new charter would assign the committee jurisdiction over safety issues. As you know, prior to this change as being recommended, that was previously handled by the Safety and Security Committee, which will now focus solely on security, and this action will be referred to the board for a full vote at the board meeting.
Very good. It's an action item. Do we need to move it?
Yes, you need to move it.
Great. Second. In favor?
Michael?
The second action items for capital construction. This item requests approval of a settlement agreement with the number 7 extension tunneling contractor in the amount of $5.7 million. The settlement resolves several issues as outlined in the staff summary that was presented earlier.
Are there any
correct
questions
that
on
the
this?
purpose of this is to speed up the process so that we can get it completion at an earliest possible date?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this one? All in favor? Okay.
Finally, in Section 8 of the agenda, we are presenting a station access change proposal for the permanent closure of a station entrance at the Briarwood Station on the E&F line in Queens. New York State Department of Transportation is widening a portion of the Van Wyck Expressway, and it requires closure of a lightly used station entrance. However, DOT will also improve the heavily used main entrance and build another secondary entrance, and with your approval, it will be referred to the full board for a vote. This is a very complicated location in an intersection of the Van Wyck Expressway in close proximity to Queens Boulevard, and we support this action.
There's a map on 8.6 that shows how difficult access to this station is, and hopefully it'll be improved with this action. Okay. Can I have any comments on that vote? All in favor? Okay.
Winton, come up, please.
I asked Tom and staff to spend a little time with us on 2 topics that have been hot topics over the past several months. One of them is the problems that continue to bedevil the number 7 line, and we know we had some weekend closures this weekend that I think accomplished a great deal, and I look forward to hearing about that. And also an update on what's happening with signals, another part of the system that certainly needs ongoing improvement. So we're going to start with signals first?
Yes.
Great.
The committee chair asked that we come back and provide quarterly status updates on the actions taken to implement the recommendations from the outfall of the signals investigation. If you remember, we had widespread abuse of reporting of maintenance and inspection actions. And we want to report on not only the actions we've taken with respect to that, but how we're doing with respect to getting back on cycle on the frequency of those inspections. Winton, Chief Electrical Officer.
Good morning. Just by way of introduction, and we certainly mentioned this last time we met before the committee, New York City transit signal system is comprised of 15,000 signal locations, about approximately 2,600 track switches, mainline and yard, 200 interlockings, and 300,000 relays, and a host of other ancillary equipment. It's operated and maintained by 1,300 signal employees, and they do this on the right-of-way of a wayside equipment on a 24/7 operation. Signal maintenance criteria: signals are maintained every 90 days. Switches are maintained, by and large, every 30 days. Yard switches are maintained every 30 days, and that includes the test, up to 22 of them, and those tests are performed at varying intervals. We had identified key problems back in November when we met before the committee. The signal maintenance tests and inspection, falsification obviously was of chief concern. We also were considerably behind schedule in the central business district signal maintenance functions, as well as the testing. Central business district, of course, being the boundaries of 125th Street down to go midway into Brooklyn. We were failing to meet the maintenance test and inspection schedule, and we basically had a production, if you will, oriented culture. As a result of the falsification issue and the ensuing Inspector General investigation, a maintenance task force was put together by the direction of Tom Prendergast, and that task force came out with 22 recommendations. Some of those key recommendations was to update the Department of Subways executive management on a weekly basis with respect to the status of the signal maintenance and testing activity. It was also recommended to revise the Signal Equipment Information System, or SICE. That's a very old and antiquated asset management program that we use to report and track maintenance and testing. Excuse me. Some of the recommendations that came out of the task force with respect to the Signal Equipment Information System was to timestamp signal maintainer entries, to identify the manual entry, the personnel who are entering the maintenance activity, entering the maintenance activity, and to provide ad hoc reporting. And that was something that the system in its former state could not do. It was also recommended that we perform a comprehensive review of our maintenance and testing practices, and that includes the schedule, the way maintenance and testing is performed, and the like. What have we done thus far? Well, we immediately addressed the central business district maintenance issue. We deployed forces to right away service and test that equipment in that area, and got it up to speed with respect to the schedule. But we knew that would be tough to sustain, and so we restructured the central business district maintenance forces in order to do that. And I'll give you a little bit more detail on how we did so momentarily. We overhauled the Signal Equipment Information System to provide identification, accountability, as well as ad hoc reporting functionality. Again, that was in response to a recommendation from the Signal Maintenance Task Force, but we also recognized that it actually was a hindrance to our ability to schedule and plan and report on maintenance. And so we partnered with our Technology and Information Services Department to provide an upgraded version of SICE. We also established a quality assurance group that will have three core functions. They will plan, and schedule maintenance. They will report on the maintenance that is being performed, as well as perform quality audits and quality assurance checks on the maintenance after it's performed by the maintainers, as well as checked by the supervisors. So this is a new function that the division will employ. We also completed 9 of the 22 signal maintenance task force recommendations, most of which include the reporting functionality of the signal equipment information system, so that we can provide, again, identification and accountability to those who might be prone to falsification. A little bit more detail on the Central Business District restructuring. We commenced this new approach on April 10th. A little bit details on it. Provides better productivity, and it addresses really the falsification issue. One of the ways that it does that is because the supervisor, unlike the rest of the division, works directly with the maintainers. They actually go out with the maintainers and perform that work. Traditionally, maintainers were somewhat autonomous, and in large part they still are. But we feel that this new approach to doing maintenance puts the supervisor with the maintainer and actually is checking the work as it's being performed. The maintenance hubs are located, basically we have 19 4-person teams on the Lexington, 7th Avenue, and 8th Avenue lines. They work exclusively on maintenance and testing during the hours of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We felt that this was important because, and as subsequent studies actually show, we get much more productivity from the maintainers at night. We have less of an impact, obviously, on the throughput of trains and on impact on the customers, and we just get a better quality product. Still some things we need to work out with respect to the process, but we feel that it has a lot of potential. The locations of those hubs, the maintenance hubs, are at South Ferry, J Street, as well as 96th Street on the 7th Avenue line. So where are we now? After putting in place the recommendations from the Signal Maintenance Task Force, as well as restructuring, well, this chart shows a little bit of before and after. It reflects a lot of the work, the hard work that has gone forth from the division. The blue lines indicate the percentages of our maintenance back in November, and the pink line, if you will, reflects where we are now.
Percentage of maintenance done according to schedule within the time frames.
Correct. Yes. We were at 71% for switch maintenance in November. We're at about 80% now. We were at 72% for signal maintenance, and we're at about 84% now. Now, we should be clear. The goal, as we mentioned back to you in December, is 95%. That is 95% of the equipment on any given day should be serviced according to their prescribed interval. We're still not there, but we've made considerable progress. The other bars indicate the different tests that are performed, and again, we've gone up with that as well. We feel, though, that the real focus needed to be here, and quite frankly, because we've focused on this, it's affected our other numbers, and that's with respect to how far we were overdue with some of the equipment. And if you just indulge me, I'll try and walk everyone through this. In November of 2010, we had 112 switches that were 30 days overdue, 30 days or more overdue. Now, that's gone up a little bit, but the reason why is because we also had 496 switches in November that were 90 days overdue. And that's just something that we could not have, and so we focused on that. We now have only 44 switches that are 90 days overdue, and those are really your yard switches. They're important. They're important certainly to reliability, but we have no mainline switches right now that are 90 days overdue, and we felt that was very important to focus on. Jumping over to the signals, pretty much the same performance. We had almost 3,000, over 3,000, excuse me, signals that were 30 days overdue, 1,400 that were 90 days overdue. We now have 246 signals that are 90 days overdue, and a little over 1,000 that are 90 days overdue. So we continue to make progress. We feel that as we roll out, we improve the process in the central business district and employ some of those things system-wide. We feel that we're confident that those numbers will get even better. And certainly the goal is to not have, certainly have nothing that is 90 days overdue, especially on the main line. Moving forward, we want to implement all 22 signal maintenance task force recommendations by the end of this year. We have activated the central business district structure. Again, we have some process issues we need to work out to really to fully realize the level of productivity that's expected. But we also want to expand these new maintenance practices division-wide, and that's something that we're working on with our strategic initiatives group. We continue to review and where we find it necessary and practical to modify the maintenance, testing, and inspection criteria. We're working closely with our signal operations engineering team, and we'll include our Office of System Safety with that as well. We want to expand the quality assurance process to ensure that we're not just putting out numbers, but we're actually doing the work. We're actually performing quality maintenance and thereby providing better reliability. And we also intend to procure an enterprise asset management system. As I mentioned, we were able to, using in-house resources, dramatically improve and, in fact, overhaul our signal equipment information system. But we're evaluating whether that is the end-all and whether we want to move forward with something else, and that's something that we're looking very closely at as well. I've included in the back of the presentation as well as a description of some of the tests and inspections, a little bit more detail, if you had any questions on that. Thank you.
Winton, thank you very much. A couple of takeaways from this. It appears that we're now able to match an individual with a maintenance event so that we know specifically the name, rank, and serial number of the person who claims to have inspected that signal. And while it's great that we've cut back on the tardiness of getting all of this done, what's even better is that hopefully we've now eliminated the falsification of the data, which I think all of us were pretty shocked and appalled by. What have you done about the bar scanners? Are people turning those in at the end of the day the way they're supposed to rather than keeping them in their lockers and drawers? Can you give us an update on that?
We found by use of this new functionality that some maintainers were still in possession, may have still been in possession of barcodes. The activity that we saw wasn't something that we felt that was realistic, that they can perform. And so we had conducted another locker inspection. We didn't come up with any barcodes at that time, but we did address it with disciplinary charges on that particular maintainer, and that process is ongoing.
I mean, some of the things that Winton talked about that are functional changes. The fact that they're working in the core area with these hub teams, where there's a closer relationship on a day-to-day basis for the supervisor with the employees he or she has working for them. You'll be able to track and keep better accountability in terms of what people are doing. But from the signal equipment information system standpoint, they're also putting in mechanisms to be able to flag people that are probably doing inordinate amounts of inspections. So the processes will continue. And one of the reasons why, if you see like a date of April, why did it take, you had to work through a change of a signal pick through a collective bargaining arrangement. But by and large, the employees have responded very well. I still say that the people that were the outliers are the minority, but we have to manage through that level if that's what's necessary.
Well, I commend you for hopping on this and getting it resolved. And Winton, thank you for taking this on. Any questions? Yes.
This is more in the nature of a rhetorical question. I assume that this will be extended, particularly as to signals, outside of the central business district and outside the borough of Manhattan. Am I right?
Absolutely. We're already looking at least 2 other opportunities where we can put together take on this hub type approach. Again, it's we're looking at locations where at these hubs we have upwards of 45 people reporting to one location. So we have to make sure that facilities meet that type of reporting load. That we're meeting all the OSHA requirements, and so in some cases we may have to build enclosures on an abandoned mezzanine, put up cinder block walls and plumbing and the like. So with this first go around, we were able to locate facilities that already existed. South Ferry, thanks to MTA Capital Construction, had a really good facility there that was built just for that purpose, a centrally located employee facility that was able to facilitate that.
Thank you.
I want to get, I know we're running over. We started about 10 minutes late, but I think it's really important in light of everything that's gone on in the 7 line that all of you get this presentation today. Thanks.
Okay, you should have a copy of it in front of you as well, but you'll track up here, and I'll be brief, but we'll definitely have whatever questions you want to answer. We've had a number of service reliability problems on the number 7. You've seen them. You've read about them in the paper, and some elected officials in Long Island City had a press conference a few weeks back. Real quickly, this is one of the busiest lines in the subway system. In terms of fall-off from weekday to weekend, there's actually less of a fall-off. This is a line that is used very heavily on the weekend, not just for sporting events, but for people commuting to and from Queens, between Queens and Manhattan. It's a complicated operation because it has the peak express track in the peak direction, inbound in the morning, outbound in the afternoon, and that creates some problems in terms of service reliability when those trains have to merge onto the 2-track portion of the system, the line between Queensboro Plaza and Times Square. There has been a marked decrease in reliability over the past 4 months, and it's not something that we deny. It's something we need to deal with. Real quick, the next slide. A lot of times we don't do a good job of explaining to people there's stuff behind the curtain that needs to be done. Track signals and vehicles are things people see pretty readily, but communications, power, infrastructure, pumps, things of that nature are just as important, and we need to be able to find the maintenance time to deal with those issues. And if we want to assure reliable performance, we have to make sure those elements are maintained on a regular basis. Next slide, recent reliability trends. There has been an increase in the number of delays on the line. Signal delays and track delays have been up appreciably, primarily on that 2-track section of the line between Queensboro Plaza and Times Square, especially in the vicinity of the Steinway tube, which is our most constricted tube in terms of clearance. It is so constricted that in the event of a delay in rush hour or train traffic, we cannot send train crews down to work under traffic. We have to suspend traffic and send crews in there because they don't have sufficient room to be able to clear up. It was a tunnel that was built for totally different purposes back when it was built as a trolley tunnel. And while we've modernized certain elements of the entire line, 63% of the signal system is yet to be modernized. It's still 50 to 95 years old. We have a communication-based train control. That's the second line in the system that's going to receive that. And not only will that bring the signal system up to a state of good repair, it will enable us to actually increase the number of trains that we can operate in the peak hour from some 26 right now to around 30. So that's an additional capacity in the peak hour of probably another 4,000 to 5,000 customers. We have certain times of the year that we're restricted in terms of doing maintenance. We actually can't do out-of-phase closures of the Steinway tube and affect large portions of the line while the Mets are playing, when the U.S. Open is there, and certainly during the Christmas moratorium between Thanksgiving and New Year's. And because of that, it's hard to schedule a lot of the work. And in the past, we've been reluctant to do that because of the impacts on the customers. We can no longer assume that same stance. Something has to change in the dynamic. It just so happens that, let me just change the next slide there. There are a disproportionate number of delays on the 2-track segment. I alluded to that earlier. And that's where we need to focus our efforts. They're the oldest part of the number 7 line. And I've already talked about the tunnel clearance issues. Next slide. This just shows you some of the examples. For argument's sake, the bench wall, which is this portion right here, there are duct banks, and that's where all the power signal communication lines run. And normally you stand up on top of that to clear for a train, but anybody over about 4.5 feet tall, the curvature of the tunnel will bring you into the dynamic clearance envelope of the train, which is why I have to get down on my hands and knees to clear up for a train in a tunnel. So that's why we actually suspend train service when they're doing work. It also has its unique construction. We normally have in modified Type 2, every fourth tie is a long tie, and so you have the ability to be able to shovel the silt out that's in the trough here in the center on a much easier basis. But due to the nature of this construction, the ties actually go from tunnel ring to tunnel ring, and they're long ties. And silt comes in with water. There's water intrusion in all of our tunnels. We have a sump, and normally the silt will drop out and lay in the trough, and you have to clean it out. The duct bank is in some places spalling. The concrete is, if you put your finger on it, it will literally turn to dust. And so in the longer term, we're going to have to do some things to be able to address those issues, those structural issues. Next slide, please. There are 22 signal circuits that need repair. 6 of them are critical. They're right in the area of the Steinway tube on both C1 and C2 track. That's Manhattan and Queens bound. We need to replace those circuits. We also need to put in a different type of rail fastening system that better helps insulate that electrical circuit from the water conditions that we have in there. We have to clean up the muck, and we also have to, we're losing negative return. That happens in most electrical railroads, but to a higher degree here. What does that mean? To have a complete circuit, you have positive current go out, you use it for whatever it is, and it comes back in a negative return back to the substation. We're losing that negative return. It's going somewhere. And so we need to make sure that, and it's probably more pronounced, it is more pronounced in this tunnel than it is in others. We can take some remedial action in the near term to fix things, but over the longer term, we're going to have more permanent actions. And while most of the work can be done overnight, there are times that we need a 55-hour general order from 11 p.m. on a Friday night to 5 a.m. on a Monday morning to be able to effectuate all the work. Next slide. Unique third rail in the everything's unique in the Steinway tube. It's what they call an umbrella rail. It's a rail that looks like an umbrella, the top surface of it. We need to replace that. We also need to, with standard rail, we need to provide a negative return system in the tunnel to be able to bring that current back. The CBTC will, as I said, increase the ability to run more trains per hour, but that's a multi-year effort, and we need to have an engineering and assessment done. Where we do not want to be is a $2 billion investment is being made to the western end of this line for very good reasons, and we do not want to have that entire line be susceptible to its weakest link, which is the Steinway tube. So in the longer term, we need to make sure that actions are being taken commensurate with making those repairs and increasing the reliability of the entire line so that by the time that extension goes into service, we don't have that weak link. The duct bank assessment will be a critical part of that, because if you have to replace that duct bank under traffic, it will require more closures. Closures expected right now for this spring and summer. We had one over the past weekend. We'll have another one in June and another one in July. I can say Maintenance Away did an exceptionally good job this weekend. They took out 3,800 bags of silt. There's a bag about this big. It's a nylon bag. That's how you got to remove it. They rebuilt 2 total track circuits and replaced 1,000 feet of track fastening equipment. So we're well on our way to take advantage of the 3 closures that we're going to have. In the fall, we're going to begin more of the same with the installation of the communication-based train control work on the line. And we're going to have closures for 45th Road, Courthouse Square. I believe we have to have out-of-face replacements of the platforms. Isn't that what we have to do there, Fred? And the weekend closures will start at 11:30 Friday and end at 5. It just so happens that go to the next slide, is that there are some places in the system when we do these out-of-face closures. Not only are we stopping the service for the people on that line, there's no really viable alternative for somebody to use. There is a viable alternative here in terms of the N and the Q. You can transfer relatively easily at Queensboro Plaza, and you can take the end of the Q over into Manhattan. It's a service pattern that our customers on the number 7 know very well. Not that we like to do it, but when we have had to implement on the spur of the moment, and we put people out in the stations and make the announcements, people handle it pretty well.
You're extending the queue to Queensboro during these GOs? Pete thought the queue was ending at 57th.
Peter?
Sometimes we do extend the queue. Sometimes we run more ends. The effect is it depends on other work going on, but the effect is, yes, we double the amount of service from Queensboro into the city on weekends when the 7's shut down.
The other thing we do is we provide a bus shuttle between Vernon Jackson, Courthouse Square, and Queensboro Plaza. That is a certain amount of back riding, but that is a practice we apply in other places of the system. One of the unfortunate things is there has been a tremendous increase in residential building in Long Island City. The amount of ridership we're seeing that generates and ends at that point is much higher than it ever was before. And so the elected officials are pushing and asking us not only for additional bus service locally, but a special bus shuttle to run from Long Island, from that area, all the way over to Manhattan. It just doesn't make sense from a cost standpoint. And what we found in the past when we instituted shuttles like that, people vote with their feet by going over to, they'd rather back ride and take the subway because it'd be a lot faster. The last slide just shows where the shuttle bus stops are. It's a pretty good service. There's no doubt about it. People, like I said before, don't like to back ride, but it's a practice we utilize in other places of the city. We will provide quite a bit of outreach when we do this. We met with 3 of the local elected officials there, Assemblywoman Kathy Nolan, State Senator Peter Generis, and City Councilman Van Bramer, and explained to them that as much as we don't like to take lines out of service, for the good of the long term and the needs to improve the reliability of the line, we will be doing it. In some, there are going to be three approaches to dealing with the number 7 line. The immediate approach are some of the actions I've just outlined today to improve the reliability in the line for the near term. The second series of actions will be the work on the CBTC to increase capacity and state of good repair. The third set of actions, which I've yet to detail because we need to do an engineering assessment, is what needs to be done to make sure that that Steinway Tunnel and all the issues are dealt with so that when we go into the launch of the service on the extension on the west end, we're sure that those problems are behind us.
Are there any questions? Just a comment. I really think that communication with the public really is critical in all of this, and I think we've been doing a very good job at it, but I think we need to kind of step it up a little bit in that after we spend a weekend taking the line out of service, it would be great if somehow we could put up posters at the affected station saying, we closed your line this weekend, here's what we got accomplished, with just a few points. So people feel like, yeah, there really is improvement here. I'm not sure everyone appreciates the age and the decrepitude of the Steinway tube, but also if there's a way we could educate the public as to the monumental issues we face in getting the service across and what we're doing to ameliorate the situation, I hope it'll go a long way to making people a little less restive about these closures.
It's a point well taken because we need to. What I just explained to you got done this weekend, you can appreciate, but if we don't tell it to the public, they won't know, and they just know they've been impacted for an entire weekend without the service they normally use.
Any questions or comments? We went a little bit over, but thanks very much for your attention. Could I have a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.